So, today, we're going to step into the world of 1 and 2 Samuel. And, we really have to step carefully here, because what we're about to explore, it's so much more than just a story about kings and battles. This is really an account of the human heart and, well, of God's heart, too. It's a profound look at how God works through history, especially when his people demand something he never, ever intended for.
This one verse, it's really the key that unlocks everything in these ancient books. It's the theme, it's the central conflict, and in the end, it's the final judgment. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Just let that thought, let it really sink in and guide us as we go through this.
Okay, so here's something really fascinating. If you look at how the Hebrew Bible classifies these books, they're not put under history. No, they're filed under prophets. And that one little detail, it tells us something absolutely crucial. This isn't history like we think of it, just a list of events and dates. This is history evaluated through God's eyes. And that perspective, well, it explains why the narrative moves in such a unique way. I mean, think about it. Entire decades can just disappear in silence. But then a single conversation, just one moment of choice, gets explored in this immense, almost microscopic detail. Why? Because from God's point of view, significance isn't measured by power or what you achieve. It's all about obedience.
You see, this entire story, it all pivots on one single, fateful demand from the people of Israel. For centuries, they had been led directly by God. But then, they look at the nations around them, at their armies and their kings, and they say, "Give us a king. We just want to be like everyone else."
Their real king, you see, was invisible. His rule, it required faith. And that's hard. They wanted something they could see, a warrior king, a banner they could follow into battle, a human leader who just looked the part. And God warns them. He lays it out perfectly clear what this will cost them, their sons, their daughters, their land, their very freedom. But they insist. And so God gives them the king they want, not the king they needed.
And so we meet Saul. And honestly, from a purely human perspective, he's the perfect choice. He's tall, he's handsome, he's impressive. The text literally says he was head and shoulders above everyone else. He looked like a king. He looked like leadership. And for a little while, it actually worked.
But here's the thing about Saul, his fatal flaw. It wasn't a lack of talent or ability, not at all. It was a deep, deep insecurity that just kept leading him into this pattern of disobedience. And you can see the contrast so clearly. God's way required trust. Saul's way was all about impatience. And when he failed, God's way required repentance. Saul's way, it was just to make excuses. And then the prophet Samuel comes and delivers God's verdict. And the words are just devastating. He says, "Obedience is better than sacrifice." It's not about the big religious shows you put on. It's about the simple, trusting obedience that comes from your heart. And right there, in that moment, Saul loses the kingdom. And it wasn't because of one single mistake. No, it was because his heart, it was never really surrendered in the first place.
So now we get this incredible contrast. As God is rejecting Saul, he sends Samuel to find the next king. And where does he find him? Not in an army, he finds him in a field. Not a general, but a young shepherd boy named David. This is the least likely choice you could imagine. He was overlooked even by his own family. But God's verdict just completely overturns all human logic. He says, "This is a man after my own heart."
But David's path to actually becoming king, it's long and it's agonizing. It's this whole process. First he's welcomed into Saul's court. Then he's out, hunted like an animal in the wilderness. Then he's up, finally crowned king. And then he's down, completely broken by his own sin. But none of this was random, not a single bit of it. This was God's training ground. David didn't learn leadership in a palace. He learned it in caves. You see, God was forging a king, and a process like that, well, it just can't be rushed.
And this right here, this is the crucial point. The real difference between Saul and David wasn't that one of them sinned and the other one didn't. Oh no. In fact, you could argue David's sins were way more catastrophic. The difference, the whole difference, was what they did after they sinned. When Saul was confronted, what did he do? He defended himself. He made excuses. But David? David just broke. He completely fell apart before God and repented with every fiber of his being.
Now let's be clear. David's failure was profound. His sin with Bathsheba, it wasn't just a slip-up. It was lust, deceit, a terrible abuse of power, and ultimately, murder. And the consequences, they just shattered his family and his kingdom. And yet, in the middle of all that darkness, after this complete and total failure, God does something absolutely astonishing. He makes David a promise. He makes what's called a covenant with David. And we need to understand a covenant isn't just a simple contract. It's a sacred, binding, unbreakable promise. And the amazing thing is, it's rooted entirely in the faithfulness of God himself, not in the worthiness of the person receiving it. It's literally God binding himself to his own word.
And this is the promise he makes. Your throne will endure forever. Think about that. This promise points so far beyond David, far beyond his son Solomon, far beyond any earthly king. It's a promise whose fulfillment, well, it arrives quietly, centuries later, in a descendant of David, one who is born a king, dies a king, and now reigns as king forever. Jesus.
So, when we step back from it all, what do these books really teach us? Well, for one, they show us how God responds to our human demands, even the foolish ones. We see how power doesn't so much corrupt a person as it magnifies the character that was already there all along. We learn that there's a huge difference between just feeling sorry, remorse, and truly repenting. But I think above all, we see that the main character here isn't Samuel or Saul or even David. The real subject of these books is God himself. We see his grief, his incredible patience, and his absolutely unrelenting faithfulness.
And so these ancient books leave us with the one question that, in the end, is the only one that really matters. It's the very same question they left for Israel thousands of years ago. The king you can see with your eyes, or the king you have to trust with your heart? The king you want, or the king you truly need? Who is really your king?